Good evening, and welcome to another Wednesday evening study brought to you by the Biltmore Church of Christ. We've been studying the Beatitudes, which are found in Matthew chapter 5, and we've been going through that over the past several weeks. Tonight we're going to continue on with that study, and we are now at the 7th Beatitude. But before we get into it, let's do a real quick review. The Beatitudes are describing the citizen in God's kingdom. Remember, Christ, he came to proclaim the coming kingdom, and that was a very misunderstood thing at the time. Many of the Israelites believed that the Messiah was going to come and establish an earthly kingdom, and he was going to reign from a very literal earthly throne, and he was going to be Israel's liberator. He was going to set them free from captivity. They weren't going to be under anyone else. They'll be their own nation. And at this time, they're technically under Rome. They've got a lot of freedom. They can still do a lot of whatever they want to do, but they pay tribute to Rome. That is who is over them. And so they thought this Messiah was going to come and free them, so they're not under anybody. They don't owe tribute to anyone. And Jesus says, well, yeah, I am the Messiah. Yes, I am the king of this kingdom. Yeah, I've come to make you free, to bring you liberation. But it's not the way you're thinking of it. 2,000 years removed, we have hindsight. We can look back and we can understand it much better. We have the benefit of studying these things at arm's length, so we can put two and two together. We can figure this stuff out a little better than some of those Israelites who are right there in the middle of it, caught up in it. They couldn't really see it all. And so Jesus is going through and he's describing this kingdom. He's describing the citizens of who is in God's kingdom and what they look like. What is the identity? What are the characteristics of the people who belong to God? And he says that the citizen in God's kingdom will be poor in spirit. They will be mournful over sin. They'll be meek. They are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. They're merciful. They are pure in heart. And over the past several lessons, we've talked about how these are actually stepping stones. It's not that you just have all of them at the same time. You sort of progress from one to the other. Well, after all of this, we then come to another one. It's not always so easy for us, but that is being a peacemaker. Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Let's take a closer look at that. First off, what is peace? Peace can be defined as the presence of order and harmony and the absence of hostility. Just because you are not fighting at the moment doesn't necessarily mean there's peace, right? Many of you are old enough to remember the Cold War. I remember the very tail end of it. I was 9 years old when the Berlin Wall fell. I have a very faint, sort of fleeting memories of seeing Ronald Reagan on TV and hearing about the tensions with the USSR and Gorbachev and all of that. There were no shots fired during all of this. There were no invasions, and yet we called it a war. It was the Cold War. Well, even though there was no direct armed conflict that resulted in casualties, you also don't call it peace, do you? Even though we're not out there with our guns shooting at each other, it was not peace. People were afraid that hostilities could break out at any moment. A peacemaker isn't someone who can just avoid direct hostilities. It's someone who actually promotes real peace. If you say, hey, I hate that guy with a passion. I cannot stand that guy. I won't talk to him. I won't help him. I won't even look at him. I'm not going to cross the street to help him at all. But hey, it's not like I'm going to shoot the guy, right? Is that really peace? Is that peace? Well, no, that's just not shooting the guy. You're just not doing him bodily harm, but that doesn't mean you're actually at peace. We live in a world that is full of chaos and sin and hostility. We live in a world that is full of hatred and anger. There is a lot of rage. Peacemakers are the people of God who bring actual peace in the midst of all of that. You see, God is a God of peace. In creation, he brought order and harmony out of the chaos. In redemption, he ends the hostility that exists between himself and humanity, and he did that by the sacrifice of his own son. Many times we see that God is a God of order. He is a God of peace. And so just like God is a peacemaker, the Christian also needs to be a peacemaker. We must be people who will bring justice, who will bring order, who will bring reconciliation to this world. We're not just saying, well, I don't get involved in it. I'll just leave it alone. Therefore, I'm a peacemaker. No, that's just letting it be what it is. Peacemakers bring peace. And if we do this, if we actually are a peacemaker, then we earn the right to be called the children of God or the sons of God, because we are being like him. We are reflecting the character of our Father who is in heaven. If we do this, we are working together with Christ, who is called the Prince of Peace. Let's take a look at Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. This verse right here, this passage is a prophecy about the coming of Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah who's going to establish his kingdom, the very kingdom that Jesus is now describing in the Sermon on the Mount. But notice the title that he's given in there. He is called the Prince of Peace. And in verse 7 it says, of the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end. Peace is an important part of who Jesus is. It is an important part of what he came to do. And if we are going to be people who reflect Christ, demonstrate Christ to the world, then it needs to be an important part of who we are as well and what we do in this world. Let's take a look at a passage in the New Testament. Paul writes in Romans 12, 17 through 21, repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So, are you very good at living that passage out right there? Are you living at peace with everyone as far as it depends on you? Meaning, if it's in your power, if you have the ability, if you have the capacity, are you making peace with everyone? I think too often we are far too ready to not be at peace with other people. Some people are simply okay being in conflict with others, and I don't mean direct hostility. I mean more like a personal Cold War, right? If you don't like me, if you've got a problem with me, fine. Don't mess with me, I won't mess with you, right? If you don't want to be my friend, fine. Don't be my friend, I won't be your friend. We'll just go our separate ways. Too many of us have that attitude, right? Do you have that attitude? We have this take it or leave it. You can like me, you can not like me, I don't really care. You go do your thing, I'll do my thing. Let's just not cross paths and everybody will be okay. Is that you? There are some of us also, unfortunately, who have to be in conflict, or else life is just boring. They have to have a fight going on. They have to have someone or something to complain about, or they just don't know what to do with themselves. And we call those people drama queens. And what is funny about this is several years ago, I was teaching a young teen class at church, and there was this girl in there who told me, I hate drama. Oh, I'm so sick of all the drama going on. And I said, but you're always in it. Oh, I hate it. I know, but you realize you are always in the middle of it. Every time I talk to you, there's some crazy he said, she said, breakup, not friends anymore, fighting over a guy. Who knows what it is? You're always in the middle of drama. She says, yeah, I know. It's really annoying. I can't stand it. And I had to say, think about that for a second. Could it be that you're actually encouraging it? That you actually invite it into your lives? That you sort of just egg it on? I had to say, I'm sorry, but you are a drama queen. You revel in it. You like it. That's where you need to be. And her response was, how dare you call me that? And she got mad at me, and she didn't talk to me for a long time, and she had a whole new thing to be angry about and to have some drama over. We should be peacemakers. We should be the people that just squash the anger, we squash the gossip, we squash the hatred, whatever it might be. In this world, there is so much negativity coming. There's negativity around us in all different forms. And the thing about being a peacemaker is we have to actually care about what sort of example we are among people. Because that negativity is attacking. That negativity is going after all sorts of people in all these different ways. And what are we going to do about it? We have to care what people think about us. And I know that isn't a popular thing to say. It kind of goes against the grain of how we are taught to think. But we need to care what sort of reputation we have with people and whether or not we get along with people. Why? As I said, some of us have that attitude of, you don't like me, I don't like you, fine. We'll leave it at that, whatever. And you might think, well, what's wrong with that attitude? I can't make people like me. I can't force them to like me, so why should I care about whether they like me? Well, we need to care about whether they like us because we need to care about whether we can have a positive influence in their life. That negative stuff is attacking them. Can we counterattack? Can we meet the negativity with positivity? When the gossip comes, can we squash it? When the anger comes, can we squash it? When the hatred and the rage and all that happens, are we going to be able to have a positive influence to kill all that stuff off? And that's not to say that we need to go out of our way to be the popular person or that we need to somehow compromise our values in order to get people to like us or any of that. No, it's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about is the ability to share the gospel with other people. And if someone really doesn't like us, then we are completely ineffective in sharing Christ. So we should want to actually have good relationships with as many people as we can because that's how we're going to be a good example. Obviously, there's going to be personality clashes. We are not going to be besties with everybody. That's just not going to happen. But at the very least, we should want those people that we clash with, those people that we're polar opposites. We do not get along with them. We want them to be able to say, oh yeah, that Michael guy, yeah, we don't really hang out much. We don't spend a lot of time. We're not on the same page. His interests aren't my interests, but yeah, he's a good guy. I like him. At the very minimum, that's what we're shooting for. Interestingly, I think this is where I personally am with most people, and it's not because of any conscious effort on my part. That is my natural personality. My senior year of high school, we did that whole voting thing among the senior class, most whatever or best whatever. And so there's most popular and best dressed and best hair and most likely to see all that stuff that, I didn't expect to win any of those. I did win one. In my class, I was voted most dependable. And at the time, I was not happy with that. Because what high school kid wants to go down as most dependable? That might as well be biggest dork, right? It's no good. Who wants that as a kid? Well, now that I'm older, I realize that's actually a good thing. Now we can look back and be like, hey, that's a positive quality. I'm okay with being the most dependable because it means that even though we might not be close friends, we might not hang out very much, you can still count on me. I'll be there for you. So even though I kind of rejected that in my younger years, I realized that that's something to cultivate. That is something to promote. We want to be that sort of person because that's the person who has the ability and who is in the position to stop the chaos, to stop the commotion, and to bring peace. Throughout Scripture, we are told to pursue peace, and that peace is something that should be at the forefront of our lives. In James 3, verse 18, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Psalm 34:14, turn away from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. Romans 14:19, so then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. This is why this particular Beatitude ends with, for they shall be sons of God. People who are constantly caught up in hostility can't be sons of God because that's not who He is. People who are constantly caught up in the chaos and the drama can't be sons of God because that's not who He is. God is a God of peace. And if we're going to show people who God is, if we're going to reflect God in our lives, if we are truly going to be called godly people, then we must have peace. And we must pursue peace. Are you pursuing what makes for peace? Are you pursuing what makes for mutual upbuilding? I hope you are, because this is a big part of what it means to be a citizen of the kingdom of God. If you are going to be in God's kingdom, then you must be a peaceful person. And if you are not a peaceful person, then you should consider what that might mean and what the implications of that are. Next week, we are going to finish up this series. And we're going to talk about persecution. That's the last one of the Beatitudes that Jesus mentions. And we're going to be combining verses 10, 11, and 12 of Matthew 5. So I hope you will join us again for that. As always, I hope you're doing great and hope you continue to have a really good week. I hope to see you next week. Bye.